This is the miter saw, oftentimes called a chop saw. It's a favorite tool among Finnish carpenters. They will take it to the job site so they can cut molding and trim as they're trimming out a house. And it's also very common in woodworking shops. In the woodworking shop, all it really does is a variety of different crosscuts. In a straight crosscut, the piece is cut square to the edge. Pivoting the head in either direction produces a miter cut. Tilting the head produces a bevel cut. Tilting and pivoting the head produces a compound miter cut. This particular saw, this is a 10-inch compound miter saw. It's a compound miter because, as you see, it can cut both a miter and a bevel at the same time, a compound cut. This is 10 inches because it uses a 10-inch saw blade, and it just pivots from a single point in the back to drop down into the workpiece to make the cut. You can also get a 12-inch compound miter saw, and that, of course, has a 12-inch blade. The other type of saw is a sliding compound miter saw, and that's more like this one. This is a 12-inch sliding compound miter saw. What a sliding compound miter saw brings to the equation is the ability to slide. This 12-inch saw has a 13-inch crosscut capacity, which is a little more than typical. About 12.5 to 13 inches is about what you'll get in crosscut capacity with a slider. Now, using a sliding compound miter saw is a little bit different than you'll see with a regular compound miter saw. Here, you pull it out to the full length of travel, lower the head just above your workpiece, start the saw, and then push it back through for the cut, like this. Miter saws really need some sort of outfeed support when you're working with the longer pieces. Now, it can be as nice as the cabinets that we had on either side of that 10-inch saw we saw a moment ago, or it could be a commercially purchased stand like this one. Here we have rollers that slide out to give you plenty of outfeed support. When you put a long piece up there now, you've got plenty of room out there. When the cut is made, it's not going to flop off. Another option is if you just have a temporary need for some outfeed support, say you're at a job site or just making a few quick cuts, you can set the saw on a bench and then use some scraps on either side to support your cutoffs. A 12-inch compound miter saw has a crosscut capacity of about 8 inches, and a 10-inch compound miter saw like this one has a crosscut capacity of about 5.5. Now, it might seem like bigger is always better, but really for woodworking, you can get by very well for most of the cuts you'll ever need to do with a 10-inch or 12-inch compound miter saw. So you can save yourself some money buying a little smaller saw. Plus, you don't have to worry so much about that extra space you need behind the saw for that sliding action. Let's talk a little bit about using the saw safely. When you're making a cut, you want to make sure, of course, to keep your fingers out of the harm's way, out of the way of the blade. Quick trick I can show you to make sure you always do that is when you grab your workpiece to hold it on the table, just take your pinky, hook it on the end of the fence. Now your hand can't possibly get anywhere near where that blade's going to go, so just hook your pinky, secure your workpiece, and then make your cut. Once you've got the blade down and you've made your cut, hold that head down there until the blade stops spinning, and then raise it up. Allowing that blade to stop spinning before you bring the head back up reduces your exposure to that spinning blade. Plus, it also improves the quality of your woodworking because you're not bringing a spinning blade back up through the workpiece, which could cause chip out on this top face. When you're cross-cutting lumber that may not be perfectly straight, you want to make sure you don't have a gap between the lumber and the fence. The reason is the rotation of that blade to pull the lumber up against the fence. And as it cuts through, as you're pushing against there, the blade may cause that kerf to close a little bit, bind around the blade, and it can cause the head of the saw to kick up a little bit. Easy way to cure that is simply turn the piece over. Now I've got that bow back there. It's tight against the fence before it makes contact with the blade. Other thing to consider is, does it crown up off the table? For the same reason. This one has a little bit of a crown here, so I'd like to flip that upside down and keep this edge against the fence. Now I can hold that down and cut that safely. It's tight against the fence, it's tight to the table. On some cuts, they're a little bit awkward, and the temptation is to get your hands where they shouldn't be. And sometimes you want to hold here and move the saw with this. Well, never cross your hands. This hand is in the path of the blade. If you need an extra hand for some of these jobs, saws come with a hold down, and this simply drops into a hole behind the fence, and then you can pivot it closer to the blade than you would want to put your fingers. A couple twists of the screw, and that firmly holds your workpiece to the table so you can make the cut keeping your hands where they should be safely. Miter saws are great for making all kinds of crosscuts. One thing to know though, if you go out to buy a miter saw, it's probably going to come with a blade that is better suited for the construction site, for guys that are chopping 2x4s and 2x6s. Get yourself a good quality 60-tooth or 80-tooth blade that's designed for a miter saw and for woodworking. Get yourself a lot cleaner cuts with a 60 or an 80-tooth blade.